ready, Ed? Okay, once upon a time, boys and girls, many years ago, before the written word, there lived an ancient tradition of storytelling about worlds full of myth, magic, good and evil. These stories were often dark and twisted. They survived and thrived and fed on the imaginations and the beating hearts of children. And they were told often by women and were named old wives' tales. One day, a wise old wizard said that if you want your children to be intelligent, then you would read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, then you would read them more fairy tales. And he was wise. And a princely scribe also said that many good things, love of the poor, respect, courtesy, many good things such as these have been first nourished in the child's heart by this powerful aid. From the 1600s, people such as Charles Perrault, the Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen started collecting these tales, started writing them down, publishing them, and making them readily available for everybody to read. And such was the importance of these that people like W.H. Auden actually said that this collection of the Grimm's fairy tales was amongst the several important texts on which Western society has been built. And if all this sounds a bit romantic and a little bit whimsical, then even Ofsted say that in education, the importance of storytelling in the development of a pupil's soul. Enchanted walks in the woods, visits to mythical cities and towers and castles. These are all the realms of childhood memories of times for us as parents that take us back to these beautiful sort of nostalgic times. And what happened from collecting all these hundreds and hundreds of tales was that it was found that these stories didn't exist in isolation. In fact, they existed in different parts of the world at the same time. Cinderella, for example, exists. There are about 500 versions of Cinderella. In Britain, our versions of Cinderella include Mossy Coat, Catskin, Kappa Rushes, and so on. In China, Yes Shen. In Germany, Aschenputtel. She can be a Zulu girl. She can be an orphan. She can be a boy in certain stories. But in the earlier examples of Cinderella, and certainly, actually, the contrast, and we're going to see Disney, in Disney's version of Cinderella, she's often quite vulnerable, quite timid. But actually, the early versions of Cinderella, she was very strong, very willful, very independent, and knew her own mind. Little Red Riding Hood exists all over the world as well. In the French version of Little Red Riding Hood, her and her grandmother are devoured by a wolf. In the Grimm's version of it, her grandmother and herself are cut out of a wolf's stomach. In certain versions of Little Red Riding Hood, Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother are invited to dine on the ears of her grandmother. And in China, they kill him, the wolf, by killing him by stabbing a spear down his throat. Perfect bedtime reading. Rumpelstiltskin can be in different parts of the world. Rick Din, Rick Don, Mandy Pansy, Batsy Matsley, Ootsley Gootsley, Tittly Tory, Whoopity Story. All these versions exist all around the world. They tell us a great deal about the cultures from which they arose. I really struggled with that one. But they're not just throwaway ancient tales that we tell our kids. Imagery from fairy tales is all over the place. We see them all the time. In music, in film, in books, in cartoons. For example, how many of you can complete this line? Are you ready? Let it go, you... Yes! Okay, thank you. I really struggled there. Thanks very much for joining in. But yeah, that's from Hans Christian Andersen's Snow Queen. And I don't think there was a singing snowman in the original. Basically, fairy tales are places where magic happens for children, for us as adults as well. For me, they're so important that essentially they are places where we can all learn to be good. And with that, I'd like to wish you a great evening, and I hope you all live happily ever after. Thank you very much.